influential on character acting and on voice acting. And before we really dive into the Optimus Prime of it all, I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit about like your training as an actor. How you started out.
I was thinking of going to college. But in high school, I entered an elocution contest one year, and I won it. And so I was sitting in front of an auditorium with about 3 times as many, high schools. And I made my little thing, and I won the bronze coin or whatever it was. It was a good indicator, that I could speak. So, when I got through high school, there was a theater school opening in Canada, in Montreal, my hometown. It was called the National Theatre School of Canada. They were accepting 15 students from across Canada who spoke English and 15 French. They auditioned all the way across Canada, and I auditioned. It was a crazy audition. And I had to recite something from Shakespeare, and I had to do something that I chose to do. And so, and then I had to do an improvisation on this theater stage in Montreal, a very beautiful theater. So it was quite formal, and there was only about 4 people in the audience, but I couldn't see them. And nonetheless, I auditioned, and I was accepted to be in that school year, and I did it for 3 years. Every year we would summer in Stratford, Ontario, and join with the Shakespearean Festival there, and partake in some of their plays, and put on our own play at the end of the school year. So, and then you would go off into theater across Canada, not the United States by any means. That came years later. I really was, I was interested in theater, but I had a little problem with the other actors, the very serious actors, the Shakespearean actors, the stuffed shirts types of actors, see? And there you are, Oh, really, you do comedy? Yes. And what did you do last summer, Peter? So I was a disc jockey at CKGM in Montreal. Oh, really? I decided a few years of that I'd get out, and I did get out. And at my first opportunity, I got out. And I came back to Montreal, and I got into a review, a satirical review on the 2nd floor of a nightclub. Yeah. Good years.
And so then was it working as a disc jockey that got you into voice acting and announcing originally, or how'd you get turned on to all of that?
I guess it was the radio show. Because I did my first show was the Milkman's Matinee. From midnight till 6 o'clock in the morning. And I could have any guest I wanted, in my mind, as long as I did the voice, it was fine. So I would bring in all kinds of different people, and some guys would call up and say, Cullen, you're full of, hey, he's not there. Or whatever. I said I would pretend I was the guest that I was singing. Of course it was. They even had the Nelson Riddle Orchestra and playing these hit songs without the singer, and I would sing on top of it, and say it was Dean Martin, and I have him in the studio. Hey, what a liar I was. I got through that, and then I got back into television and review, and that led me to a television series in Canada, comedy, and then as a result, a radio show with a full orchestra that led me to bring in all these stars, legitimate, real stars from Los Angeles, television shows like Laugh-In and et cetera, and they would guest star in our radio show called Funny You Should Say That. And with a full orchestra and a sound effects guy that had real car doors that he slammed and broke glass like in the old-fashioned radio shows. It was quite an experience and really a wonderful time in my life. And they came back to Los Angeles, talked about me to some producers. They were putting on some new shows and get rid of others. And I got a call to come down and do a show to replace Laugh-In, and it was called It's a Wacky World. And that's how I came to Hollywood, on the 2-hour special that went into the toilette. Je sais vrai, wonder the toilette. And I don't mean toilet zone. Anyway, it bombed.
Peter, at the time you were doing that, so I mean, you've done so much work across both live action, voice acting, you've done narration and all of it. So were you doing all of that at once, or was it a slower build to doing more like voice work and announcing at the same time you were acting?
Well, to make it as a voiceover person, back in those days, you were up against a lot of competition. You would often see a lot of these performers on the hit television shows at the time that were in black and white, shows like The Twilight Zone I just mentioned, Gunsmoke, and hosts of other shows, a lot of westerns. And you would end up going to an audition during the day for an advertising company doing a brand of something. And in that room would be all these stars that you've been watching on television for years. And for me, coming from Canada, I would look at some of these guys and say, what am I doing in the room with these guys? I haven't got a prayer. These are stars. And of course they were. But they were just actors trying to make a living the same way I was. And let's face it, back in those days, they didn't pay a lot of money. It's not what they pay kids today. I mean, it's just absurd. Millions of dollars. I won't go and cry. But, oh, the hell with it. All right, so, I'm drawing this whole thing out. I'm not sure if it's worth it. But you would end up doing auditions for almost anything. And one in particular, I remember they needed a voice for a car that couldn't get started in the morning. So, and it was a dialogue. Hi, my name is Ronald. They can't get started in the morning. I'm a 4-door sedan that I turn in. And I can't get started. So anyway, stupid stuff like that.
So it was like an early audition for a sentient vehicle. It's a little foreshadowing.
So it was dialogue like, I'm a 5-year-old car that can't get started in the morning, and blah blah blah. But you had lived and you made it up, and you made the car sound like a car that's trying to start. So, but you could be subjected to all kinds of areas like this, and it was just what you thrilled the audience at the time behind the glass, which would be 2 people, the producer and probably the director and the writer. And if you thrilled them, the chances were you were going to make $90.60, for that radio show or for that radio ad or a TV ad back in those days. Didn't pay very much. But you went to auditions hopefully every day. So it was kind of like being an Uber driver today. The more rides you get, the more cash you can buy.
Well, I'd say it paid off for you. Especially in the 70s and the 80s, it really feels like that era in particular was like a flashpoint for animation. I mean, there were so many shows being created and so many series being launched that are still with us today. I mean, Transformers being like right at the top of that list. Why do you think that period of time was such a sort of a rich period for this kind of work?
It really was kind of a renaissance with when you look at all the series that were coming out of Ruby Spears, Hanna-Barbera, Disney, just to mention three. The opportunities were great. And at that time, the voices that I grew up with and were still working. Mel Blancs, people of that stature. And when I first got into my first series with Frank Welker, and Frank was my first mentor, and I knew of him from his reputation. And we did a show called Mighty Man and Yuck. Well, I don't think you can include that in the Renaissance package. But that led to other shows, and with Frank as well. And the Transformers was at that very time slot in the early 80s that brought us all together, all of you. And that's what we have in common. And I often say that, because I often say that to fans across the country and in Canada. I said, we all have something in common, and it's the Transformers series itself, where we connected. And all these years later, when we see ourselves gathered in a room, and I'll do the voice, my voice is almost dying today, but I will do a voice that is so synonymous with your childhood or your young adulthood. And for a lot of kids that didn't have parents, the latchkey kids, that a father figure appeared, a figure that had nobility, courage, honor, integrity, honesty, that sense of strength that wasn't really predominant in animation prior to that or during. It certainly was in some of your live action things. There was always a father figure somehow. But when Prime came out to affect a child's life without a parent, and the characters became the parents, that bond that continued to blend in through other doors and other windows, and, where we all in our lives look up to somebody or feel a part of. Well, Transformers did that, and primarily, Optimus Prime did that as a figure of leadership at a time when it was needed. And when he said, till all are one, there was something uniting about that. And I was very part of hero worship in my life. My brother Larry, a former Marine who fought in Vietnam, and he was a lieutenant in Vietnam. He lost a lot of his platoon in some very serious battles, one in particular is Operation Hastings. He lost many, many of his fellow men, and when he came back, he was a very different man. But he was my hero all through life, 16 months older, 6 inches taller, and a voice deeper than mine that I eventually impersonated. So I'll tell you the story if you want to hear it. I almost know it by heart now because I've been saying it for years, but it's so poignant. Larry asked me one day, he said, "Peter, where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to audition." He said, "What? For what?" He says, "I'm going to be a truck." I said, "A truck?" He would laugh because I would tell him, where I was going, like a car that couldn't get started in the morning. What a way to make a living be. So I said, "Yeah, but he's a hero truck." And he said,
Peter, if you're gonna be a hero, be a real hero. Don't be a Hollywood phony, yelling and screaming and pretending you're a tough guy. Don't go running around. Be strong enough to be gentle. Be compassionate. And when you have to be tough, be firm. Those words are like those words, similar words, but always the one that rings true, be strong enough to be gentle. And his voice became very, and is a low by nature voice anyway. And he said, Peter, be strong enough to be gentle. I said, okay, Larry, let's see you later. I went to the edition, opened up the page, and there it was, Optimus Prime, and his first name came up, Larry just came through me and said, my name is Optimus Prime. And he could have read, my name is Larry Cullen. From the planet Marine Corps. And that's how it came about. 2 weeks later, I had the job, and Transformers 1 came into being.
And Peter, I mean, you're so masterful at creating these very three-dimensional, realized characters with just your voice. I think Prime's a testament to that, because we've seen him transcend that series into films, into pop culture at large. Like, what are the challenges for an actor of getting that level of realization to a character, really just being able to use your voice? How do you approach that?
That's a really interesting question, but the essence of that really is what you can do best, and how to get to do your best is by never giving up and always staying at it, no matter how depressing it may be. Eventually it will happen, and you get better with practice, and like anybody else. I had the opportunity on the airplane yesterday coming from Florida to see a movie with Wayne Gretzky, Pelé, the soccer player, Jerry Rice, the football receiver, and how they came to be, and their extreme professionality and their extreme perfection and individuality in a sport, where normally you're told to be the same or treated to be the same. They went outside and did things differently, and became huge leaders in their industry. Well, it's very the same in show business. If you have a talent, if you're an artist, if you write, if you're a musician, it's what you put into it. What kind of lick do you add with your fingers or your lips or your heart? And if you do it long enough and you do it consistently, you're going to become great. You're going to become great if you pass the point where you say, I can't do it anymore, and just jump over that part and keep on going, never give up. Never, never, never give in to anything. Great or small, petty or otherwise. No Winston Churchill expression. Except, of course, to convictions of honor and good sense.
It's great. And obviously the character of Optimus Prime is such a huge part of pop culture at large now. When did you first realize that was the case? When did you first realize what a big deal this character in Transformers was?
The internet. Absolutely. Because we never had a thermometer that would tell us if the Transformers was a hit or our characters were a hit or popular or even liked or appreciated. We didn't know. Until the internet came along years later, and then subsequently some of those conventions like right here. And the first one that I went to. And I couldn't believe. It was a group about this size. And they just wanted to hear me speak and talk just the way we are right now. And I was flabbergasted. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't, it was in Rochester, New York. I couldn't believe it. And they said, oh my God, there's a whole following. And it's on the internet. And I said, internet? What's the internet? Better get one of those. So I, was led into the modern age, kicking and spewing and screaming and scratching, and I finally got one of those things. About months later, I learned how to use it, and I spent hours on there just fuddling around. It's like having a whole encyclopedia in the trunk of your car, jeez. Wow, and it's right there at your fingertips, holy crow. And which led me to find out that there were people talking about the Transformers. And that's when I learned about all of you. And that's why my love goes out to you guys, because it was you and that internet that exploded to Paramount and to the powers be what you thought and what you cared about for the first time in the history of show business. This is really an important turnaround, because other than that, they would have hired George Clooney, somebody else, to do Optimus Prime. But because of that force, because of you, and the strong force that you are, I'm here to do Optimus Prime, and for that I love you and thank you.
And Peter, what was your reaction when you found out that Paramount was going to do the slate of live-action Transformers films? Did it feel like this, or did it feel like just kind of a natural step, just knowing
That they were going to do it.
that they were just basically that they were going to turn these into live-action films? It's like, what was your reaction to that?
I hadn't thought about it since I, lost it in 1986 with the Orson Welles movie, and I just moved on. But in fact, I didn't care. No, I didn't. They got rid of me, and screw them. But and then it even got worse, because I had to really eat crow when they said, Peter, there's the director of this new movie coming out called Transformers. I want you to come down to Paramount and audition for the role of Optimus Prime. Holy, spell the rest of that word. Are you serious? Come on. I created that character. Come on. Anyway, I auditioned for Michael Bay 3 times. 3 times, yeah. I'll tell you an interesting story, too. The third audition that I had, I walked into a room and he had his copywriter there, and he had some other girl, an assistant, and he's sitting behind the desk, the girl to my right, and the other AD to the left, and they had the script, and he says, okay, I want you to read this scene with a character called Ironhide, and I went, so he starts reading, and she said, Prime, she said, Prime, leaking oil barrels or whatever. I want to kick some butt. So, give me that. Prime, I want to kick some butt. And I went into it and said, not now, Ironhide, not now. Oh, Prime, come on, he needs to be taught a lesson. Not now. Ironhide, cool your heels. Oh, gee, Prime. And he said, okay, oh, that's enough, thank you.
So did Bay say, well, I think we found the guy?
They hired somebody else. So I had no idea where I was going to go. Anyway, I found out a little while later that I was going to be Optimus Prime. And of course, everything else is history that way.
And in Bumblebee, that just came out this year, it's kind of been a return to form for the original Transformers designs, including Optimus Prime. It's like kind of for the first time, we got to see him look the way he looks in the original cartoon show, as opposed to sort of all the fancy Michael Bay like redesigns. What did you think of this new Bumblebee? Were you a fan?
Well, Bumblebee, when he first came out, didn't, just made noises.
Right.
And that was Frank Welker. He did a lot of that. And Bumblebee was just fun. I mean, you felt something around Bumblebee. You had a sense of compassion, and he was like every man. That was a great thing. And it was a natural progression into getting back into the more human side. And of course, the directors, they thought the same way. Let's get a little more compassionate. Let's get a little more into relationships and understanding. And the original G1, which I think is a great, great thing, because that applies to Optimus Prime, who is the steadfast component for our hope in life, to be honest, to have dignity and to have compassion and trustworthiness and honor and integrity, and a sense of strength through gentleness, which is something this world needs. And the world certainly needed it, in 2007, and I think the world needs it more today. And my feelings are, if they had any brains, which sometimes I suspect differently, they had any brains, they would take advantage and use the popularity of the Transformers franchise, the strength that they have with developing the characters through, the human side and the relationships that happen not only between robots, but robots and people. And I think that Optimus Prime would be a great star of that movie, to head the strength and compassion and dignity that Transformers really needs, and it's always had, and should have it from now on.
Fantastic. And in closing, so last summer, I was lucky enough to be one of the people that put together the Bumblebee panel at San Diego Comic-Con last year, and you had a great surprise visit at the end of it, where you got to stand up and ask a question and ask Travis Knight and everyone, where's the Optimus Prime standalone movie? So if you had your druthers, what's the Optimus Prime standalone movie? What would you like to see him do in his own headline film that he hasn't been able to do in the Transformers movies so far?
I think what I just reiterated, I said the strength of Optimus Prime, what he stands for: honor, dignity, integrity, trustworthiness, the pillars of character, and to lead that into our, 2020s and beyond, as a sense of hope for the future of our world and the future of our new generations coming up. Your future kids, your kids right now. And I certainly would like to see it before I go, because I'm only 19.